The new stepmother took over our family, and nobody saw it coming. A story by American Story Channel. The night my mother died, the wind in Phoenix howled like something wounded. I was 17, sitting on the porch steps of our modest ranch house on Elm Street, watching the dust devils dance across the empty lot next door. My father was inside, making phone calls in that hollow, robotic voice people use when grief hasn't quite caught up with them yet. My little brother, Tommy, was asleep in his room, clutching the stuffed elephant Mom had sewn for him when he was 3. I didn't know it then, but that wind was carrying more than desert sand. It was carrying the beginning of the end of everything I'd ever known. 3 months later, my father brought her home. Her name was Vivian Ashford, and she walked into our lives like she already owned the deed to them. I remember the first time I saw her, standing in our kitchen on a Tuesday evening in late August, wearing a cream-colored blouse that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. She was 42, blonde in that expensive way that comes from a salon in Scottsdale rather than a box from Walmart, and she smiled at me like we were old friends reuniting after years apart. "Charlotte," she said, extending a hand with manicured nails the color of pale pink seashells. "Your father has told me so much about you. I'm Vivian." I didn't shake her hand. I looked past her to my father, who stood by the refrigerator with a glass of bourbon in his fist, looking both embarrassed and defiant. The expression of a man who knows he's doing something reckless but is too tired to care. "She's from Flagstaff," Dad said, as if that explained everything. "We met at a grief support group." Vivian's smile didn't waver. She let her hand drop gracefully, like a leaf settling on still water. "I lost my husband 2 years ago," she said softly. "Car accident. I know what you children are going through. I want to help children." I was 17, 6 months from graduation, and Tommy was 12. We weren't children. But Vivian spoke the word with such practiced tenderness that I saw my father's face soften, saw him reach out and touch her shoulder like she was some kind of saint descended to save our broken family. I should have known then. I should have recognized the performance for what it was. But grief does strange things to your instincts. It wraps them in cotton, muffles the alarm bells, makes you desperate to believe that someone, anyone, can stitch the world back together. "Welcome to the family," I said, and the words tasted like ash. And the wedding happened 6 weeks later. Small ceremony at a chapel in Sedona, just the 4 of us plus Vivian's brother, a silent man named Richard who watched everything with eyes like a hawk spotting prey from 1,000 feet up. Vivian wore white. Not traditional white, she assured us, just ivory, more sophisticated. My father cried when he slipped the ring on her finger. Tommy cried because Dad was crying. I stood by the fake flowers near the altar and counted the seconds until I could escape to the parking lot and smoke the cigarette I'd bummed off the janitor. That night, back at our house, Vivian carried her suitcases into my mother's bedroom. Not the guest room, not the room my father had been sleeping in alone for 3 months. My mother's room, with the watercolor paintings of Arizona sunsets that Mom had done herself, with the quilt her grandmother had made in Oklahoma in 1954, with the faint scent of lavender that still lingered in the curtains no matter how many times the windows were opened. "Your father and I discussed it," Vivian said, catching my expression as I stood in the doorway. "He thought it would be healthier for everyone if we started fresh. New bed, new sheets. But the room is so lovely, Charlotte. Your mother had wonderful taste." She was already rearranging the dresser drawers, her silk robes sliding next to my mother's old sweaters. I watched her move a framed photograph of Mom holding Tommy as a baby from the nightstand to the closet shelf, her movements casual, almost accidental. "That stays out," I said. Vivian turned, her eyebrows arching in perfect, delicate surprise. "Of course, dear. I was just dusting. This must be so hard for you." She placed the photo back, but not where it had been, 2 inches to the left, small enough that my father wouldn't notice, big enough that I would never stop noticing. The changes started small, like termites in the foundation. First, the food. My father had always been a meat and potatoes man. Steak on Fridays, pork chops on Sundays, the occasional green bean for health. Vivian introduced clean eating. Quinoa replaced rice. Kale appeared in smoothies that turned the kitchen blender into a screaming demon every morning at 6. She hired a nutritionist from Tucson who came once a week and left charts on the refrigerator showing optimal antioxidant levels. "Your father has high blood pressure," Vivian explained when I complained about the lack of fried chicken. "I'm simply looking out for his health. You want him around for your college graduation, don't you, Charlotte?" She said it so reasonably, with such genuine concern crinkling the corners of her eyes, that I felt unreasonable for wanting a cheeseburger. Then came the rules. No shoes in the house. Vivian had the hardwood floors refinished and installed a shoe rack by the door that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. No eating in bedrooms, which meant Tommy couldn't have his Saturday morning cereal cartoons in his room anymore. No friends over on school nights, which eliminated the study groups I'd been hosting for my AP history class since sophomore year. "Structure is important for healing," Vivian told my father, who nodded like she'd discovered the secret to eternal life. "The children need boundaries now more than ever. They've been through so much." My father, who had once let me stay up until midnight watching old westerns with him, who had never cared about muddy footprints or crumbs in the bed, who had been the soft place to fall my entire life. My father just nodded and took another sip of his green smoothie. "She's trying to help Charlie," he said to me one night, using the nickname only Mom had used. "She's been through loss too. She understands." But Vivian didn't understand. Vivian had never understood anything about us. She was building something new on the ruins of our old life, and she was doing it brick by careful brick while we watched, too stunned to stop her. By November, she'd taken over the finances. I found out by accident. I was looking for my birth certificate to fill out college applications. Early decision deadlines for Arizona State and University of Arizona were approaching, and I couldn't find the file box where Dad kept important documents. It wasn't in the hall closet where it had always lived. It wasn't in the office. Finally, I found it in Vivian's walk-in closet, nestled between her designer handbags and shoeboxes labeled in her perfect handwriting. The bank statements inside made my stomach drop. My mother's life insurance policy, $200,000 that Dad had set aside for Tommy's and my college funds, had been transferred to a joint account with Vivian's name on it. The house, which had been paid off thanks to my grandparents' careful saving, now had a second mortgage I hadn't known about. There were receipts for furniture stores in Scottsdale, for a timeshare in Palm Springs, for a wellness retreat in Sedona that cost more than my father made in 2 months as a mechanic at the Ford dealership. "Your father asked me to manage things," Vivian said when I confronted her, her voice smooth as glass. "He's been so overwhelmed, Charlotte. You know how men are with paperwork." He wanted me to invest the money wisely, plan for the future. The future? My voice cracked. You spent $10,000 on a vacation we didn't take. That was a business investment. Networking with other professionals. You wouldn't understand, dear. You're still so young. She smiled, reaching out to pat my cheek. I jerked away. Besides, your father approved everything. Ask him yourself. I did. That night, after Tommy went to bed, I spread the statements across the kitchen table and demanded answers. My father looked at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. Vivian explained all this to me, he said slowly. The life insurance wasn't earning enough interest. She found better investments. The house. She said we could use the equity to fix it up, increase the value. Charlie, she's a financial advisor. This is what she does. She's a predator, I said, tears burning my eyes. Dad, she's taking everything Mom left us. She's taking our home. Don't. His voice hardened, a tone I'd never heard directed at me. Don't talk about Vivian like that. She's the only reason I'm getting out of bed in the morning. She's the only reason this family hasn't fallen apart completely. You don't see what she does for us, Charlie. You don't see how much she cares. But I did see. I saw exactly how much Vivian cared. I saw it in the way she looked at my father's paycheck before he did. I saw it in the way she flinched when Tommy mentioned Mom's name. I saw it in the way she watched me, always watching, like a gardener waiting for a weed to show itself so she could pluck it out. Christmas that year was a performance worthy of Broadway. Vivian decorated the house with white lights and silver ornaments, nothing like the multicolored chaos my mother had loved. She hired a caterer from Phoenix to prepare a goose instead of our traditional ham. She invited her brother Richard and 3 couples I'd never met, people from her network who drank expensive wine and talked about stock portfolios and vacation homes. Tommy spent the evening in his room, door locked, refusing to come out. I sat at the dining table in a dress Vivian had picked out, navy blue, more appropriate for a young lady than the red sweater I'd wanted to wear, and smiled until my face hurt. Charlotte is quite the student, Vivian told her guests, her hand resting on my shoulder with fingers that dug in just slightly too hard. Though she's been struggling a bit since her mother's passing. Understandable, of course. That's why we're looking at community college first, aren't we, dear? Build up her confidence before she tries for a university. I stared at her. I'm not going to community college. I got into ASU, early decision. The table went quiet. Vivian's smile froze. Oh, I must have misunderstood your father. He mentioned you were having second thoughts about the cost. ASU offered me a partial scholarship, I said, looking at my father, who was suddenly very interested in his wine glass. And there's the college fund. Mom's college fund. Of course, Vivian said, recovering smoothly. We were just discussing the best way to use those resources. Community college is so much more economical, and then you can transfer. Really, Charlotte, you should be grateful we're looking out for your future. So many young people drown in student debt these days. After the guests left, I found my father in the garage, sitting in his old recliner, the one Mom had always threatened to throw out. Why didn't you tell her about ASU? I demanded. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Vivian thinks it's better if you stay closer to home for now. She thinks, you've been through so much, Charlie. She doesn't want you to take on too much too fast. And what do you think? The garage was cold, the December wind finding every crack in the old door. My father looked small in his chair, smaller than I'd ever seen him. I think, he said quietly, that I can't do this alone. I think that without Vivian, I wouldn't make it through another year. And if she says community college is better, then maybe she's right. She's the only one who seems to know what she's doing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him until he woke up and saw the woman who had wrapped herself around our lives like kudzu, choking out everything that had existed before her. But I just stood there, watching my father stare at the concrete floor, and I realized that the man who had taught me to ride a bike and change a tire and stand up to bullies, that man was gone. Vivian had buried him somewhere I couldn't reach, and she was wearing his grief like armor. January brought the worst change of all. Tommy came home from school crying, which wasn't unusual. He was a sensitive kid, always had been. But this was different. He threw his backpack on the floor and ran to his room, and when I followed, I found him curled under his blankets, shaking. Mrs. Patterson called Dad, he whispered. She said I'm emotionally disturbed. She said I need special help. Mrs. Patterson was the school counselor, a kind woman who had known our mother. What happened? Nothing. I was drawing in class during free time, and she took it. She said it was concerning. He showed me the drawing, crumpled in his pocket. It was our family, Mom, Dad, Tommy, me, standing in front of our house. Mom had angel wings. The drawing was beautiful, heartbreaking. The work of a 12-year-old who missed his mother so much he could barely breathe. Vivian had visited the school that morning. I'd seen the appointment on the calendar. Parent-teacher conference, she'd called it, though she wasn't our parent. The next day, Vivian announced that Tommy would be transferring to Brookside Academy, a private school in Scottsdale. They have an excellent counseling program, she told my father over dinner. Individual therapy, small classes. It's exactly what he needs. The public school system is failing him. Brookside costs $30,000 a year, I said. An investment in his future. Vivian didn't look at me. I've already arranged a tour for next week. Richard knows the headmaster. Tommy doesn't want to go, I said. He wants to stay with his friends. He wants... Charlotte! My father's voice was sharp. Vivian is trying to help your brother. The least you can do is be grateful. Tommy went to Brookside in February. Within a month, he stopped calling his old friends. Within 2, he stopped drawing. Vivian reported that his therapist, someone she had handpicked, said he was making excellent progress. He smiled more, she said. He was adjusting. But I saw the way he looked at me when Vivian wasn't watching, like he was drowning and I'd forgotten how to swim. I started keeping a journal. Evidence, I told myself, though I didn't know what kind or for whom. I documented every withdrawal from the college fund, every change to the house, every time Vivian intercepted a letter addressed to me or Tommy. I recorded her phone calls when I could, wrote down the names of her friends and business associates, saved receipts I found in the trash. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself grief had made me suspicious, that Vivian was just trying to help in her own misguided way, that my father was a grown man who could make his own choices. Then I found the will. It was March. The desert blooming with wildflowers that my mother had loved. I was cleaning the garage, Vivian's idea of spring preparation, and I found a folder wedged behind the water heater where no one would ever look. Inside were copies of documents I didn't understand at first, legal papers with stamps and signatures, and then a new will. Dated 2 weeks ago. signed by my father in shaky handwriting I barely recognized. Vivian was the sole beneficiary of everything: the house, the remaining insurance money, Dad's pension, his tools, his truck. Tommy and I were mentioned in a single line. To my children, I leave my love and the hope that they will understand the difficult choices required to protect this family's future. There was a handwritten note attached in Vivian's perfect script. Final version: execute upon confirmation of terminal diagnosis. Terminal diagnosis. I ran inside, folder clutched to my chest, and found my father in the living room, watching golf on a television Vivian had bought to replace the old one Mom and Dad had picked out together at a Black Friday sale years ago. "Dad," I could barely speak. "What is this? What did you sign?" He took the papers with trembling hands. He read them slowly, like a man waking from a dream. Vivian said, "She said it was a trust for you kids. She said I needed to protect you from taxes, from making bad decisions. She's going to inherit everything. If you die, we get nothing. And look." I pointed to the note, my finger shaking. "She's waiting for you to die. She's planning for it." He stared at the note for a long time. The golf game played on, someone making a putt to polite applause. When my father looked up at me, his eyes were wet. "She wouldn't," he whispered. "She loves me. She said I was the reason she believed in second chances." "She's lying. She's been lying since the day she walked in here. Dad, please, you have to see it. You have to." The front door opened. Vivian's heels clicked on the new hardwood floor. "Charles, I picked up your prescriptions. The doctor said—" She stopped in the living room doorway, her eyes moving from my father's face to the folder in his lap to my tear-streaked face. For a moment, something flickered in her expression. Not guilt, not fear. Calculation. Rapid, precise calculation, like a computer processing new data. Then she smiled, warm and concerned, and crossed the room to kneel by my father's chair. "Oh, Charles, you found the old papers. I told you we needed to update them, but I didn't want to worry you with the details." "Charlotte, sweetheart, you must be so confused." "Let me explain." "Explain the note," I said. "Explain terminal diagnosis." Vivian's smile didn't waver. "That was from my brother. Richard has been helping me understand estate planning." The note was a reminder to discuss options in case Charles's health declines, which it won't, because we're taking such good care of him, aren't we? She took my father's hand, her thumb stroking his knuckles. "Charles, you know I only want what's best for this family. You know I love you." I watched my father look at her, really look at her, and I saw something break in his expression. Not understanding. Something worse. Desperation. The look of a man who has bet everything on a single hand and is watching the cards turn against him, who knows he's been played but can't bear to fold. "I know," he said quietly. "I know you do." Vivian stood, smoothing her skirt. "Charlotte, I think you should go to your room. You're upset, and you're upsetting your father. We'll discuss this when you've calmed down." I didn't go to my room. I walked out the front door, down Elm Street, past the empty lot where the dust devils still danced. I walked until my feet hurt and my tears dried, and I found myself at the Phoenix Public Library, sitting in the reference section until they closed at 9. I spent the next 3 days researching. I learned about undue influence and elder financial abuse. I learned that Vivian Ashford wasn't from Flagstaff. She was from 3 states away, with a history that included 2 other marriages, both ending with a husband's death and significant financial gain. I learned that Richard wasn't her brother, but her partner in a scheme that had played out in suburbs from Colorado to Texas. I made copies. I called a lawyer, a woman named Martinez, who listened to my shaking voice and said, "Come in on Monday, bring everything." I didn't make it to Monday. On Saturday morning, I woke to sirens, red and blue lights flashing through my window, painting my bedroom walls in colors that didn't belong there. I ran downstairs in my pajamas and found paramedics in the living room, my father on a stretcher, an oxygen mask over his face. Vivian stood in the corner, perfectly composed, speaking to a police officer in a low, urgent voice. "He's been so depressed," she was saying. "So much guilt about his first wife. I found the pills this morning. I never thought he'd actually—" I pushed past her. "Dad!" His eyes opened barely, found mine. "Charlie," he whispered, "the coffee she made." Then they were moving him, loading him into the ambulance, and I was running after them, screaming his name until someone grabbed my arm and held me back. Vivian's fingers dug into my bicep. Her voice was honey and venom. "You did this," she breathed in my ear. "You upset him so much with your accusations. He couldn't take it. If he dies, Charlotte, that's on you." I turned and looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw the mask slip. Just for a second. I saw the predator beneath the perfect skin, the vulture who had circled our grief and descended the moment we were weak enough to be consumed. "You poisoned him," I said. "You put something in his coffee. He told me. He told me." Her grip tightened. "No one will believe you. You're a grieving, unstable teenager who can't accept her father's new wife. I've already spoken to the police. I've already told them about your episodes." The ambulance doors closed. The siren started. I watched it pull away, carrying the last person in the world who truly loved me, and I felt something shift inside my chest. The cotton of grief burned away, and underneath was steel. They arrested Vivian Ashford 3 days later. It turned out I wasn't the only one who'd been watching. Mrs. Patterson, the school counselor, had filed a report with Child Protective Services after Vivian's visit. She'd recognized the signs of a predator, even if no one else had. The nutritionist Vivian hired had noticed the supplements she was adding to my father's smoothies, supplements that weren't on any approved list. And the pharmacist at the CVS on Main Street had flagged the multiple prescriptions Vivian had filled at different locations, prescriptions for sedatives and heart medications that shouldn't be combined. The coffee cup from that morning had been sitting in the sink, unwashed. The police found traces of digoxin, enough to stop a heart, especially one already weakened by stress. My father survived. Barely. He spent 2 weeks in ICU at Banner University Medical Center, and when he woke up, he looked at me with clear eyes for the first time in months. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice raspy from the breathing tube. "Charlie, I'm so sorry." I held his hand, the hand that had taught me to throw a baseball and tie my shoes and believe that the world was fundamentally good if you were brave enough to face it. "We're going to be okay," I told him, "but we have to be honest now. About everything. About Mom, about how much we miss her, about how we let someone else try to fill a hole that can't be filled." He cried then, really cried, for the first time since the funeral. I cried with him, and in that hospital room, with the Phoenix sun streaming through the window, we started to rebuild. Vivian Ashford is serving 15 years in Perryville State Prison. Richard took a plea deal and testified against her. The money she stole is mostly gone, spent on vacations and jewelry and the lifestyle she'd craved. But the house is ours again. The charges were dropped from the second mortgage. My father's original will has been restored. Tommy is back at his old school. He started drawing again. Monsters and superheroes and families with wings, all the beautiful chaos of a 12-year-old imagination set free. He sees a real therapist now, someone my father chose carefully, someone who asks about mom without flinching. I'm at ASU, studying criminal justice. I want to understand how people like Vivian operate, how they find the cracks in families and pry them open, how they turn love into a weapon. I want to stop them. My father sold the house on Elm Street. Too many ghosts, he said, and I understood. We live in a smaller place now, a rental in Tempe with a garden where Tommy grows sunflowers because Mom loved them. Dad goes to a real grief group, one without predators. Sometimes he cries at dinner, sometimes we all do, but we cry together, and that's the difference. The desert wind still howls at night, especially in August when the monsoons roll in. I still sit on the porch sometimes watching the dust devils dance. But now I see them differently, not as omens, but as reminders. The desert doesn't forget. It buries things, preserves them, and sometimes, if you're patient, it reveals what was hidden all along. Vivian Ashford took a lot from us. She took our trust, our savings, our peace of mind. She nearly took my father's life, but she couldn't take what mattered most: the love my mother gave us, the bond between a father and his children, the stubborn refusal to break that lives in the heart of every family that chooses to fight. We chose to fight. We chose each other. And in the end, that's what she never understood. You can't take over a family from the outside. You can only destroy it, and even then, the pieces can be put back together. Different, scarred, but whole. Closing note. Hey there, wonderful viewers. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that family is worth fighting for and that love, real love, can survive even the darkest storms, then you're in exactly the right place. American Story Channel is where we tell the stories that matter, the ones about resilience and redemption, about the human spirit refusing to break, about the families who rebuild stronger than before. Every week, we bring you new tales from the heart of America, stories of hope, of courage, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, be part of this community of storytellers and dreamers, of people who believe that no matter how dark the night, the dawn always comes. Good luck out there. Stay strong, stay kind, and never ever let anyone tell you that your story isn't worth telling. We'll see you next time, right here on American Story Channel. Subscribe, share, believe. The American Story Channel team.